You're sitting there right now, perhaps with a few more gray hairs than you'd like to admit, wondering if your best years are behind you. Maybe you've been counting the wrinkles, obsessing over that number. 40 as if it were some kind of expiration date stamped across your potential. But I'm here to tell you something that's going to shake the very foundation of everything you've been led to believe about age, about life, and about what's possible for you. For here's the truth that society doesn't want you to know. Well, 40 isn't the beginning of the end. It's the end of the beginning. It's the end of the beginning. It's not the sunset of your life. It's the sunrise of your enlightenment. And I can prove it to you. When he asks you something that might make you uncomfortable, when was the last time you truly felt alive? Not just existing, not just going through the motions, but truly, deeply alive. Was it back in your 20s when you thought you had it all figured out? Or was it last week when you finally had the wisdom to appreciate a quiet moment with your loved ones? You see, there's a profound misconception that youth equals potential. We've bought into this collective delusion that our capacity for growth, for joy, for achievement somehow diminishes with each passing year. But that's not just wrong. It's a lie that's been holding you back from embracing the most powerful phase of your existence. Think about this. When a master craftsman creates a piece of art, what matters more? The speed at which they work or the decades of experience guiding each movement? When a surgeon performs a life-saving operation, do we wish they were younger or do we thank heaven for their years of practiced expertise? The truth is, at 40, you finally accumulated enough life experience to know what truly matters. You've failed enough times to understand that failure isn't failure. You've lived enough to know that happiness isn't found in the shallow waters of material success, but in the deep ocean of personal fulfillment. Look around you. The most influential people in history didn't peak in their youth. They blossomed when they combined their passion with the wisdom that only time can provide. They understood something that you're about to learn today. Life isn't a sprint that ends at 40. It's a marathon that begins when you finally understand who you truly are. You spent 4 decades collecting the tools you'll need for this journey. Every heartbreak, every setback, every moment of doubt. These weren't obstacles. They were preparation. They were the universe's way of getting you ready for this moment, right here, right now. At 40, you stop living life by accident and start living it on purpose. You've graduated from the school of hard knocks, and now it's time to put that education to use. You see, in your 20s, you were busy trying to prove yourself to everyone else. In your 30s, you were trying to keep up with expectations, society's, your family's, your own. But at 40, you finally have the courage to be yourself. Remember when you were younger, how you used to worry about what everyone thought, how every decision was filtered through the lens of others' approval. That mental prison starts to crumble at 40, not because you suddenly stop caring, but because you finally start caring about the right. The mystery of life isn't in trying to be what others want you to be. It's in discovering who you already are. And that discovery, that magnificent unveiling of your authentic self, that's what begins at 40. You might be thinking, but I've already made my choices. I've already set my path. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The choices you've made up until now were made by a different person. They were made by someone with less wisdom, less understanding, and less self-awareness than the person sitting here right now. At 40, you have something that no 20-year-old could ever have perspective. You understand that life isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. You know that success isn't measured by the size of your house or the brand of your car, but by the depth of your relationships and the impact you have on others. This is where the real adventure begins. This is where you start writing the story you were always meant to tell, not with the reckless abandon of youth, but with the calculated courage of experience. Not with the desperate need to prove yourself, but with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knows their worth. Think about a fine wine. It doesn't apologize for the years it took to reach its peak. A diamond doesn't wish it had spent less time under pressure. These natural wonders understand something that you need to grasp right now. Time is not your enemy. It's your ally in the pursuit of excellence. The world tries to tell us that youth is the pinnacle of existence, but that's because youth is easier to sell. You can't package wisdom in a bottle. You can't market authentic self-confidence in a jar. These precious commodities come only through living, through experiencing, through surviving and thriving through the challenges that life presents. At 40, you start to understand that the universe operates on a different timeline than the one society tries to impose upon us. Nature doesn't rush a flower to bloom before its time. An oak tree doesn't apologize for taking decades to reach its full height. Why should you apologize for taking the time you needed to become who you are? You spent 40 years gathering the ingredients. Now it's time to create the feast. You spent 40 years learning the notes. Now it's time to compose your masterpiece. You've spent 40 years preparing for this moment. Now it's time to begin. This isn't about recapturing your youth. It's about claiming your power. It's about understanding that every experience you've had, every lesson you've learned, every scar you've earned has been preparing you for what comes next. You're not starting over. You're starting from a position of unprecedented strength. The question isn't whether life begins at 40. The question is, are you ready to begin living the life you were always meant to live? Are you prepared to use the wisdom you've gained to create something extraordinary? Are you willing to step into your power and show the world what 40 years of preparation looks like in action? Because here's what I know for certain, the person you've been up until. Let me tell you about a profound truth that most people never grasp. At 40, you develop a superpower that no amount of youthful energy can match. The ability to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't. This isn't just wisdom. It's emotional intelligence refined by 4 decades of living. You know that voice in your head that used to scream about every little setback? That voice gets quieter at 40. Not because you care less, but because you've learned that most storms pass, most problems solve themselves, and most fears never materialize. This isn't resignation. It's liberation. Think about your mind like a computer. In your earlier years, you were downloading information, collecting data, gathering experiences. But at 40, something magical happens. You finally have enough processing power to make sense of it all. The patterns emerge. The connections become clear. The bigger picture reveals itself. Every tear you've shed, every mistake you've made, every apparent failure, these weren't setbacks. They were setups. Setups for this moment when you finally have the maturity to understand their purpose. You see, life isn't about avoiding the storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And at 40, you've got your dancing shoes on. The pressure to have it all figured out in your 20s and 30s is a marketing strategy, not a life strategy. Real figuring things out, that starts at 40. Because that's when you stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being something real to yourself. You've been through enough relationships to know what love really means. You've had enough jobs to understand what work really matters. You've accumulated enough stuff to realize what you actually need. This isn't the end of desire. It's the beginning of discernment. At 40, your emotional bandwidth expands. You develop the capacity to hold multiple truths simultaneously. You understand that success and failure aren't opposites. They're partners in the dance of growth. You grasp that strengths and vulnerability aren't contradictions. They're complementary forces that may remember all those times you thought you needed to change everything about yourself to be successful. Now you understand that success isn't about changing who you are. It's about becoming more of who you already are. The game isn't about transformation anymore. It's about amplification. Your 20s were about proving yourself. Your 30s were about establishing yourself. But your 40s are about expressing yourself, not the self that others expect you to be, but the self you've discovered through 4 decades of living. Let me share something powerful with you. At 40, you develop an immunity to other people's opinions. Not because you've become hard or cynical, but because you finally learned to trust your own inner voice. That voice has been shaped by 40 years of experiences, 40 years of decisions, 40 years of consequences. You know what's beautiful about this stage of life? You stop competing with others and start competing with yourself. The only person you need to be better than is who you were yesterday. And this isn't some motivational cliche. The world wants you to believe that youth is about potential and aging is about decline. But here's the truth. Your potential doesn't diminish with age. Like interest in a bank account, every year adds to your wealth of experience, your depth of understanding, your capacity for impact. At 40, you understand that happiness isn't a destination. It's a practice. It's not something you chase. It's something you cultivate. You've lived long enough to know that joy isn't found in the extraordinary moments, but in the ordinary moments experienced with extraordinary awareness. You start to realize that every zero you say to what doesn't serve you becomes AAIs as to what does. Every boundary you set isn't a limitation. It's an affirmation of your worth. Every time you choose yourself, you're not being selfish. You're being sustainable. The universe has been patient with you. It's given you 40 years to learn the fundamentals. Now it's time to apply them. It's given you 40 years to build your foundation. Now it's time to construct your legacy. It's given you 40 years to find your voice. Now it's time to sing your song. This is where it gets really interesting. Because at 40, you stop being a consumer of life and become a creator. You stop accepting what is and start envisioning what could be. You stop waiting for permission and start granting it to yourself. About this, every great story has a turning point. Every hero's journey has a moment of transformation. What if 40 isn't your midlife crisis? What if it's your midlife awakening? What if everything up until now has been preparation for what's about? You spent 40 years learning the rules. Now you have the confidence to break them when they don't serve your purpose. You've spent 40 years building your cage. Now you have the wisdom to realize you never needed it. You spent 40 years collecting belongings. Now you understand that the most valuable things you own are your experiences, your insights, your relationships. This is where courage meets capability, where wisdom meets will, where experience meets opportunity. This is where you stop explaining yourself and start expressing yourself, where you stop seeking approval and start granting it to yourself, where you stop wondering what life is all about and start showing others through your example. At 40, you understand that authenticity isn't just about being yourself. It's about being your best self. Not the best according to someone else's standards, but the best according to your own inner knowing. You've lived long enough to understand that your uniqueness isn't something to overcome. It's something to embrace. The beauty of 40 is that you finally have the tools to build what you've always dreamed of. You have the emotional intelligence to navigate complex relationships. You have the professional experience to make informed decisions. You have the self-awareness to know what truly fulfills you. There's something extraordinary that happens when you hit 40. You stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. You realize that your presence isn't a privilege granted by others. It's your birthright. And with this realization comes a power that transforms everything. Let me share a profound truth with you. The world doesn't need another person trying to fit in. The world needs people who have the courage to stand out. And at 40, you finally understand that your differences aren't defects. They're your defining features. You see, in your earlier years, life was often about accumulation. More money, more things, more achievements. But at 40, you begin to understand that true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about who you've become. The richest people aren't those with the most assets. They're those with the fewest regrets. Every challenge you've faced, every obstacle you've overcome, every moment of doubt you've pushed through, these weren't roadblocks on your journey. They were the journey. They weren't stopping you from becoming who you're meant to be. They were shaping you into who you're meant to be. At 40, you develop a superpower that youth can never match. The ability to read between the lines of life. You understand that success isn't just about reaching goals. It's about setting the right goals. It's not about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall. You know what's beautiful about this stage of life? You stop trying to fix yourself because you finally understand you were never broken. Those perceived flaws, they're what make you interesting. Those past mistakes, they're what make you wise. Those scars, they're what make you real. The truth is, at 40, you develop a relationship with time that's entirely different from your younger years. You stop seeing time as something that's running out and start seeing it as something that's running into your wisdom, running into your power, running into your purpose. Let me tell you something. The most significant achievements in your life aren't behind you. They're ahead of you. Because now you have something you've never had before, the perfect combination of energy and experience, passion and perspective, drive and discernment. Think about a master chef in their kitchen. They don't just know the recipes. They understand the chemistry of cooking They don't just follow instructions, they create new possibilities. That's you at 40. You don't just know the rules of life. You understand the principles behind them. You don't just follow the path. You create your own. The most innovative ideas, the most impactful contributions, the most meaningful changes often come from people who have lived long enough to understand both what needs to change and how to change it. Youth may have the energy to run fast, but maturity has the wisdom to run in the right direction. At 40, you start to understand that confidence isn't about knowing you'll succeed. It's about being okay with the possibility that you might fail, because you've lived long enough to know that failure isn't fatal. It's fertilizer. It's not the end of the road. It's the bend in the road. You begin to grasp that happiness isn't about having what you want. It's about wanting what you have. Not in a passive, resigned way, but in an active, appreciative way. You understand that gratitude isn't just an attitude. It's a practice that transforms your entire experience of life. The beauty of 40 is that you finally have the emotional capacity to hold life's complexities. You understand that joy and sorrow aren't opposites. They're partners in the dance of a fully lived life. You know, strength isn't about never falling. It's about always rising. Let me share something powerful with you. At 40, you develop an immunity to comparison, not because you think you're better than others, but because you finally understand that everyone is running their own race. Your only competition is the person you were yesterday, and your only obligation is to the person you're becoming tomorrow. You start to realize that every you've received in life wasn't a rejection. It was a redirection. Every door that closed wasn't an ending. It was an invitation to find a better path. Every relationship that didn't work out wasn't a failure. It was preparation for the relationships that would truly matter. The world wants you to believe that dreams have an expiration date. But here's the truth. Dreams don't expire. They evolve. They mature. They become more refined, more focused, more achievable, not because they get smaller, but because you get stronger. At 40, you understand that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about what you inspire others to achieve. It's not just about the marks you make. It's about the marks you leave. It's not just about the life you live. It's about the lives you touch. You spent 40 years learning what doesn't work. Now you have the wisdom to focus on what does. You spent 40 years trying to fit in. Now you have the courage to stand out. You spent 40 years accumulating experiences. Now you have the insight to turn those experiences into excellence. This is where purpose meets possibility, where patience meets persistence, where preparation meets opportunity. This is where you stop seeking validation and start creating value, where you stop asking for permission and start granting, where you stop wondering what life could be and start making it what it should be. The truth about 40 is that it's not about recapturing your youth. It's about capturing your essence. It's not about starting over. It's about starting from where you are with everything you've learned. It's not about second chances. It's about better choices. Think about this. Every great achievement in history was preceded by years of preparation, learning, and growth. What if these first 40 years weren't the main event? What if they were just the warm-up? What if everything you experienced up until now was just preparing you for what's about to begin? The most profound revelation at 40 isn't about what you gain. It's about what you release. You release the need to prove yourself to everyone. You release the exhausting pretense of having it all figured out. You release the crushing weight of others' expectations. And in that release, you find your power. Let me share something transformative with you. At 40, you develop an unshakable understanding that your worth isn't determined by your productivity, your appearance, or your achievements. Your worth is inherent. It's not earned through doing. It exists in being. This isn't just self-help rhetoric. It's the foundation of authentic living. Think about a tree that's weathered 40 seasons. Its roots run deep. Its trunk stands firm. Its branches reach confidently toward the sky. That tree doesn't question its right to exist. It doesn't apologize for the space it occupies. It simply is. That's you at 40. Grounded, established, ready to flourish. You know what's remarkable about this stage of life? You stop trying to control everything and start flowing with the natural rhythms of existence. not because you've given up, but because you've grown up. You understand that some of life's most beautiful moments come not from forcing things to happen, but from allowing them to unfold. At 40, your relationship with fear transforms. Fear stops being a wall that blocks you and becomes a compass that guides you, because now you understand that fear isn't a warning to stop. It's often an invitation to grow. It's not a signal to retreat. It's a call to advance with wisdom. The beauty of 40 is that you finally understand the difference between movement and progress. You've lived long enough to know that being busy isn't the same as being productive, that activity isn't the same as achievement, that motion isn't the same as meaning. Here's what they don't tell you about reaching this milestone. You develop an extraordinary ability to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important. This isn't just about time management. It's about life management. Because at 40, you realize that time isn't just money. Time is life itself. You begin to understand that every yes that you say has a cost, and every W say has a value. You realize that boundaries aren't barriers to connection. They're the foundations of authentic relationships. You discover that self-care isn't selfish. It's strategic. They tell you about a power that emerges at 40. The power to rewrite your story. Not by changing the past, but by changing how you interpret it. Every setback becomes a setup. Every failure becomes feedback. Every ending becomes a new beginning. This isn't positive thinking, it's perspective thinking. The world tries to convince us that life is a race against time. But at 40, understand that life isn't about racing against time. It's about dancing with it. It's not about how many breaths you take. It's about how many moments take your breath away. Think about this. Every master artist had to learn their craft. Every expert had to start as a beginner. Every success story had its chapters of struggle. What if 40 isn't your midpoint? What if it's your starting point? What if everything before now was just preparation for your masterpiece? At 40, you develop an immunity to urgency. Not because you become complacent, but because you become discerning. You understand that not everything that's pressing is important and not everything that's important is pressing. This isn't procrastination. It's prioritization. You start to realize that happiness isn't something you pursue. It's something you practice. Joy isn't something you find. It's something you create. Peace isn't something you seek. It's something you choose. These aren't just philosophical insights. They're practical tools for living. The truth about 40 is that it's not about having all the answers. It's about being comfortable with the questions. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters. It's not about being perfect. It's about being authentic. You stop trying to fix everything and start trying to understand everything. You stop seeking shortcuts and start appreciating the journey. You stop chasing happiness and start creating meaning. Think about a fine wine that's aged to perfection. It didn't get better by accident. It got better by design. The passing of time combined with the right conditions created something extraordinary. That's you at 40. Everything you've experienced has been preparing you for this moment. You spent 40 years learning what works and what doesn't. Now you have the wisdom to choose your battles. You spent 40 years trying to find your place in the world. Now you have the confidence to create your own space. You've spent 40 years collecting knowledge. Now you have the insight to turn that knowledge into wisdom. This is where experience meets opportunity, where wisdom meets action, where preparation meets purpose. This is where you stop explaining your dreams and start pursuing them, where you stop asking for validation and start creating value, where you stop wondering what life could be and start making it what it should be. The power of 40 isn't in what you can do. It's in what you choose to do. It's not about having more options. It's about making better choices. It's not about starting over. It's about starting right where you are with everything you've learned. At 40, understand that success isn't about reaching a destination. It's about becoming the person who can achieve that success. It's not about acquiring things. It's about acquiring wisdom. It's not about proving yourself to others. The most significant chapters of your story aren't behind you. They're ahead of you, because now you have something you've never had before, the perfect combination of energy and experience, passion and perspective, drive and discernment. This is where courage meets capability, where wisdom meets will, where experience meets opportunity. This is where you stop seeking permission and start granting it to yourself, where you stop wondering what life is about and start showing others through your example, where you stop trying to find your path and start creating it. As we stand here together on the threshold of what's possible, I want you to understand something profound. The moment you embrace 40 as a beginning rather than an ending, your entire world shifts. The lens through which you view life transforms, and with it, everything becomes possible. Let me share one last truth with you. The most powerful force in the universe isn't youth, it's purpose. And at 40, you have something that no amount of youthful energy can match. You have clarity of purpose. You know who you are. You know what matters? You know why you're here? Think about every great civilization in history. They weren't built overnight. They were built through generations of accumulated wisdom, through trials and triumphs, through failures and successes. That's you at 40. You're not just living life. You're building your legacy. The beauty of 40 is that you finally understand that your imperfections aren't limitations, they're invitations. Invitations to grow, to learn, to evolve. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decay. They're badges of experience. Your gray hairs aren't marks of aging. They're medals of wisdom earned. At 40, you develop something invaluable. The ability to distinguish between what's needed and what's wanted, between what serves you and what depletes you, between what lifts you up and what weighs you down. This isn't just decision-making. This is life mastery. You know what makes 40 fantastic? You stop trying to write a perfect story and start embracing your authentic story, because you finally understand that perfection isn't interesting. Authenticity is. Perfection isn't achievable. Excellence is. Perfection isn't relatable. Humanity is, because they don't tell you about this magical age. And you develop an unshakable understanding that your best moments aren't behind you. They're within you, waiting to be expressed. Your greatest achievements aren't in your past. They're in your potential, waiting to be realized. The world wants you to believe that life is a downhill journey after 40. But here's the truth. It's only downhill if you're standing still. When you're growing, learning, evolving, it's all uphill. And that's exactly where you want to be, because the view from the top is magnificent. Think about this. Every master was once a beginner. Every expert was once a novice. Every success story had its chapters of struggle. But what makes 40 unique is that you now have both the wisdom to learn from the past and the power to shape the future. At 40, your relationship with time transforms. You stop seeing it as something slipping away and start seeing it as something you're investing. Every moment becomes more precious, not because you have less time, but because you know better how to use it. Let me share something powerful with you. And the most significant breakthroughs in life often come not from adding new things, but from letting go of old things. At 40, you finally have the wisdom to know what to release and the courage to actually release it. You spent 40 years collecting experiences. Now it's time to turn those experiences into excellence. You spent 40 years gathering knowledge. Now it's time to transform that knowledge into wisdom. You've spent 40 years finding your voice. Now it's time to use it to speak your truth. The truth about 40 is that it's not about starting over. It's about starting right. It's not about second chances. It's about better choices. It's not about recapturing your youth. It's about capturing your potential. You stop trying to prove your worth and start living it. You stop seeking approval and start granting it to yourself. You stop wondering what life could be and start creating what it should be. Think about a masterpiece painting. The artist doesn't start with the final strokes. They start with a foundation, layer upon layer, each one adding depth, meaning, and beauty. That's you at 40. You're not finishing your masterpiece. The power of 40 isn't in what you can do. It's in what you choose to do. It's not about having more options. It's about making better choices. It's not about starting over. It's about starting from where you are with everything you've learned. As we conclude this journey together, I want you to understand something fundamental. Life doesn't begin at 40 because you suddenly become someone new. Life begins at 40 because you finally become who you've always been meant to be. You stand here today with 40 years of experiences, 40 years of lessons, 40 years of growth. But more importantly, You stand here with countless possibilities ahead of you. Because 40 isn't the age when things start winding down. It's the age when things start making sense. The most beautiful chapters of your story aren't behind you. They're ahead of you. Because now you have something you've never had before. The perfect combination of energy and experience, passion and perspective, drive and discernment. This is where courage meets capability, where wisdom meets will, where experience meets opportunity. This is where you stop seeking permission and start granting it to yourself, where you stop wondering what life is about and start showing others through your example. What will you do with this magnificent beginning? How will you use this perfect combination of wisdom and energy? What masterpiece will you create with your next 40 years? Because that's what 40 really is. It's not an ending. It's not even a milestone. It's a beginning with purpose, a beginning with wisdom, a beginning with power. Your life isn't winding down at 40. It's just warming up. Your story isn't ending. It's just getting to the good part. Your journey isn't over. It's just getting interesting. So stand tall, stand proud, stand ready. Because life doesn't just begin at 40. Life begins when you finally understand who you are and what you're capable of becoming. And that time is now. Welcome to the beginning. Welcome to your power. Welcome to 40, the age when everything becomes possible.